Your true family and friends will be with your side anyways. Any founder can absolutely create purpose regardless of what they're doing.
You didn't necessarily plan any of this. It's like everything fit together perfectly. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Pick Now podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Munn. Today, I'm really excited to have Matt Kuta on the podcast. As you know, this is a podcast about fear. It's about making tough choices, not knowing how they're going to work out. It's about the courage to do that again and again and again, which on the founder journey, we all know that really well. And I met Matt at an event about a month ago. We started talking and I realized he had examples of this courage in his whole biography. We'll get into that a little bit, but Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Great. Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Yeah. So I always like to start out at the beginning with people. And with you, you started out as an Air Force fighter pilot. Is that right?
I did. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, before that, when I was at the Air Force Academy, I was on the skydiving team, which was kind of my
Oh, wow.
introduction to aviation.
Wow. So always a risk taker? Is that, does that go back in your lineage?
I'd say calculated
Uh-huh.
risk, like you're getting highly trained to do things. But, I've had many people say, why would you jump out of a perfectly good airplane? I have a little over 570 jumps, jumped
Wow.
into, the Fiesta Bowl and the national championship game and John Ellis
So
retirement.
group kind of stuff?
Yeah, we would jump as formations,
Yeah.
or if we were doing demonstrations, we would be the guys. Like I would be a guy that would parachute in to an NFL football stadium during the national anthem with a flag. Like that would be what I
Wow.
did. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
The more I talk to you, the more there's these fascinating little stories in your background. I'm curious how many of them you have. I actually used to work with a guy who he was in Texas and he just got hooked on skydiving. And I think
Mm.
when I knew him, which was probably 20 years ago now, so he had 5,000 jumps at that. I mean,
Wow.
he would go out every weekend and do like formation jumps. He loved it. There
That's a
was
lot.
nothing that kind of got his juices flowing like skydiving. So you go skydiving, then pilot, and then you've got, from pilot, did you go, you went into private equity, right? From pilot. So tell me how that jump happens and why did that seem like it was the next step for you?
Yeah. When I was in the military, I flew the F-15 and F-15E Strike Eagle. So combat experience in Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan.
Wow.
Um,
Thank you.
and yeah, no, it was, I always say I got more out of the Air Force than they got out of me. It was a great experience. Um, and when I was leaving the military, I wanted to do something uh, that was challenging. I think some folks that are fighter pilots, they want to just fly. They
Mm-hmm.
leave the military, then they go want to be an airline pilot or something like that, which is a great career. Um, for me, it was different. I never really wanted to fly. It just kind of randomly happened that I ended up being a fighter pilot. My vision was terrible, actually. I was not medically qualified, and then my junior year at the academy, they gave me. Well, they asked if I wanted laser eye surgery, and I said sure. Uncle Sam is paying for it, and zapped my eyes, and I sit up after about 30 seconds, and my vision goes from 2600 to about 2015, 2010.
Wow.
Yeah. So I get a medical waiver and I show up to flight school and I'm like, well, since I'm here, might as well try hard. And ended up being one of the few guys that ended up getting picked to fly fighters. And so to me, a fighter pilot is less about the airplane. To me, a fighter jet is a weapon in the shape of an aircraft. A battleship is a ship is a weapon in the shape of a ship. So
Yeah.
it's more about a mentality um, of challenge and uncertainty and doing things that are fraught with danger and uncertain outcomes. So when I was leaving the military, I wanted to do something a little bit different. I didn't want to work at a large aerospace and defense company. I didn't want to be an airline pilot. Um, and going to work at private equity probably doesn't seem like a giant risk, but if you think about it, I was in my mid or I was in my early 30s, never took any finance classes until I went to business school, never worked in business. And I was like, I'm going to go work in private equity. And um, so it took a lot of work, a couple lucky breaks. And there was a period of time where I was unemployed for about not too long, about a month or two, where I was leaving the military, but I didn't have a job. And I was kind of like
Uh-huh.
waiting. Otherwise, I was going to have to go work at a kind of traditional company. And I ended up getting an opportunity to go be on the private equity investment team at Goldman Sachs in New York. And
So how does that happen? Did you
yeah,
know somebody, or like did someone introduce you to somebody? Because it doesn't seem like you're their typical hire.
I am not the typical hire. That's correct. Um, you know, for about 2 years before I started that job, 7 days a week, I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Could ask my wife if you ever meet her. Um, Studying, self-studying, networking, thinking, strategizing, and I ended up doing all different kinds of things all at the same time. Basically, I was doing business school. I was and it ended up getting an opportunity at a lower middle market private equity firm. I was dabbling in angel investing, um, and out of all of that, I ended up getting an opportunity actually as an investment banker at Goldman.
Hmm.
Um, and then when I was up there in New York, I was at a Goldman Sachs veterans, military veteran Goldman only event. And the co head of the private equity fund was like, hey, we just raised an $8 billion fund. You have an interesting background. When I was in the military, I received some awards that are um, pretty accomplished. And this guy was a veteran, so he actually understood what they meant.
You recognize that, yeah.
Yeah. And so he's like, would you be interested to join the investment team? Because I remember I had spent some time at the middle market firm and whatnot. And I was like, of course I would. And Friday I was in investment banking, and on Monday I had crossed the compliance Chinese wall, and I was on the private equity team. And
Wow.
um, I was there. There was 50 people, give or take, on the team. Um, there was me and him were the only two military veterans. About a year later, he left, so I was the only veteran at all. It was a great place with a great group of people that were incredibly talented. So I learned a lot very fast.
Wow. So the thing that I notice, I always look at through lines, and it seems like you're very driven. You're drawn to hard things. You're drawn to things that kind of prove your excellence, if I could say it that way. Like you said, you weren't drawn to the being a pilot, but it sounds like you were drawn to the challenge of being a pilot. Like where do you think that drive for excellence comes from?
Yeah, I think you articulated it correctly. I remember a very specific moment in time when I was in flight school. And the way it works is everyone starts off in the same airplane.
Uh-huh.
It's called a T6, which is it looks like a World War II propeller, fully aerobatic with an ejection seat, goes up upside down, turboprop. And everyone does that for the first 6 months. And after 6 months, you put in your request, and it's a ranking, and it's
Hmm.
it's a mathematical equation where 90% of it is quantitative scores and 10% of it is qualitative.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I knew if I put down fighters, which is where most everyone wanted to go, and if I got it, it was going to be even more work than um, kind of continuing going down the other path, which is where the majority of folks went, which was like transport aircraft. It's
Oh,
called
wow.
it's
Okay.
called the T1, T1
Uh-huh.
Jayhawk, and I was pretty tired and burnt out. I mean, it was a lot. You get a whole commercial airline license and your pilot wings in 1 year, um,
Okay.
and I was like, man, I always see the T1 guys walk into the airplane with their golf clubs. I'm like, that looks like a pretty good. good deal, you know? Um, but I decided to put down the fighter track, which is the T-38. And I remember thinking to myself, I just want to see if I can do it.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I,
What's the worst thing that can happen? They'll say no, and you'll be in the transport
yeah.
path, right?
And,
Yeah.
and that's kind of like been in general my approach to things is oftentimes I just want to see if I can do it.
Hmm.
And also I'd say I was doing an interview a while back and someone asked, "Hey, like you've done all these things, you're kind of a fairly young guy and like what's your goal? What's your goals?" And I thought about it. I was like, I don't have any goals, which is like the wrong answer for like, if you're like doing a leadership talk or something. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what I like to do is things that is uncertain with an uncertain outcome. And when the thing I'm doing ceases to become difficult and ceases to become uncertain, then it's time for me to go do something else. And it could be completely out of left field of whatever the next thing's going to be.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I get interest and purpose and motivation out of.
Yeah. So you go from pilot to Goldman Sachs to then at some point you've found a company, Voyager Technologies, and you actually recently took that company public. So it is quite a journey for someone who says they have no goals.
I was in the military station in North Carolina, so I applied to one business school, which was Duke, so I didn't have to move my family. I had a young child at the time, and so I'm at Duke, and I remember thinking, "What's the best business school?" I bet you Harvard Business School is probably pretty high up there. And so I remember Googling, what is the most difficult job to get out of Harvard Business School? And it keeps talking about private equity, private venture
Uh-huh.
capital. And then I'm like,
Yeah.
what is private equity?
There's a personal challenge aspect to that. There's also a like a fear part of it. Could I even, who would I be if like what is that thing driving you, Matt? I mean, did you come up from a family of strivers, or like what's the environment you grew up in? I mean, I'm just really fascinated with this willingness to just go all in on whatever looks interesting and challenging.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I didn't. I mean, I grew up in a great family, but it wasn't like my dad worked on Wall Street or was an entrepreneur. My dad was a prison guard or correctional officer that rose up through the Department of Justice, became a prison
Wow.
warden, and my mom worked for Denver Public School doing accounts payable. Just kind of a normal blue collar family, I suppose. And but my father always he was very strict as a
Uh-huh.
prison warden you would think would be, but in a
Yeah.
loving way. It was never anything negative. And it was always about you know pride, integrity, service,
Hmm.
um, and working like no excuses. You work harder than everybody else, or you don't even do it.
Uh-huh.
So it was probably a little bit of that for my father. And then I think it probably built on itself when I was at the Air Force Academy. You know, I'd say the academy is a great place to be from. It's not necessarily always a great place to be at. You're
Yeah. Yeah.
18 to 22-year-old young man, and you're basically trapped and quarantined in this academy, and it's very physical and psychologically rigorous. But on the back end, you you have a lot of discipline, and you can accomplish a lot of things. And then um, I'd say getting to fly fighters in my class, I think there was about 30 people in my class for pilot training, all of which were officers and all of which were smart. And I think we had four out of the 30 get fighters. So I would I would say it's been kind of like a slow burn. It wasn't like an acute specific thing.
Uh-huh. So, so have you always been an early riser, always been someone who just like studied everything that you were interested in? Is that kind of part of your makeup, do you think, or is that something you learned at some point?
Yeah, when I was in high school, my best buddy of mine, who actually ended up going to the Air Force Academy as well, he and I took a lot of classes together in high school, the AP classes like
Yeah.
physics and calculus and chemistry. And I remember what he and I would do. We would get the syllabus for the whole semester from our teacher, like in
Uh-huh.
September, let's say.
Yeah.
And he and I, we would teach ourselves the entire curriculum for the semester, do all of the homework for the entire semester in like the first month. And we would have a stack of like math homework that we just did. And
Uh-huh.
then as we then learned the rest of the semester, we just like turned it in. So we were just getting like 3 or 4 months ahead in physics or whatever.
Can you talk to my son? My son is
Yeah.
16 and he is incredibly smart, but exactly the opposite. Like if he can find a way to put it off until the last minute, he will absolutely do that. Sometimes
Yeah.
and sometimes he'll miss the deadline.
Yeah. I don't know why we did that. We just, I don't know. We just wanted to knock it out, I guess. And then, yeah, I'm to your point. I'm a very early riser. Um, Naturally, I'll set my alarm for 5:30 or 6, and I'll typically wake up at 4 to 5.
Uh-huh. What
Um,
time do you go to bed?
um, Around like 9:30.
Okay. Okay.
Um, I think the key though, like for me, at least when I wake up, um, I you know I don't play video games. I'm not on social media.
Yeah.
Um, I wake up and I use that as like an extra 2, 3, 4 hours of productive time, either for health and fitness or business things or personal stuff. Yeah,
Uh-huh. Um, how long were you at Goldman?
not long. I was there for about 2.5 years, and then I was at Partners Group briefly between Goldman and Voyager, which is a Swiss-based private equity firm.
Okay.
Um, Before I started Voyager. Um, and when I was at Goldman, we started thinking about starting Voyager. We didn't have a name for it yet.
Uh-huh.
Um, so moving to Partners Group, um, their North American headquarters is in Denver, which
Mm,
is where Voyager's headquartered. So I was switched to Partners Group, and if we never started Voyager, it's a good place to work in Colorado,
yeah.
and then not too long after that, we decided to start Voyager.
Was there something about the Air Force Academy being in Colorado Springs and like was that part of the attraction or was it just kind of random?
The state of Colorado, I'm not sure about now, but I believe at the time it has had the second most aerospace and defense industry, second
Uh-huh.
largest aerospace defense industry per capita after California. So my co-founder and I are both from Denver. He's in Denver, lives in
Oh, okay.
Denver. My wife and I grew up in Colorado. So kind of great way to come back to Colorado and also have, a large
And it made
contingent of
sense. Yeah,
people.
that's
Yeah.
interesting. Okay. So how did you meet your co-founder?
Funny, I was still in the Air Force, and
Uh-huh.
he he was I was looking for ways to get some experience in like aerospace and space investment stuff.
Hmm.
And I was on the internet one day and I saw that I was just like searching. I saw his name pop up with this space investment group.
Mm.
And it said in his bio that he was from Colorado and had his email address. So I just sent him an email
Uh-huh.
out of the blue and said, "Hey, I'm just looking to learn about some space investment. Here's my background." And he replied back like in like 2 seconds. And then
Uh-huh.
his response was like, "Can you meet me in Atlanta or something like that?" And now I'm thinking like he's like a serial killer or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, but we ended up meeting about a month later in New York City, and then we started doing kind of like due diligence and whatnot on angel investments. Then we started this nonprofit called Space for Humanity, but he founded. Um, and then we just kept in touch, honestly. And then,
So you're doing all this stuff on the side while you're
yeah,
pursuing other things? Okay.
yeah,
So how
yeah.
long has your working relationship been then with your co-founder?
Um, I think from the time we first met until now, I don't know, around 10 years or
Okay.
so, 9 or 10
Okay.
years. Yeah.
Okay. And when did the idea for Voyager come? Like, what was the idea? What distinguished it from other things in the market? Like, what was the genesis of this company?
Well, um, we both are very interested in just space and national security.
Uh-huh.
Um, and one thing that we had observed at the time, this was like 2016, 2017, 2018. There was a lot of, even really since 2010, there was a lot of little small companies getting venture capital funding.
Uh-huh.
Um, but it was like a capital structure mismatch. You know, you had all these historically these software companies, A/B testing, capex light kind of things,
Yeah.
min viable product. Um, but space and defense oftentimes has capex, which is like a curse word for venture capital investors, right?
Yeah.
But
And big front end capex.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you have all these space companies and defense companies coming up, and they have all these shiny PowerPoint presentation pitch decks. Um, and they're like, well, I guess if I'm a startup, I'm supposed to go to venture capital land and go raise money from Silicon Valley. And they could typically get funded early, like friends and family, maybe a Series A. But
Yeah.
when they start getting to the larger, more sophisticated investors, they weren't investing at scale into these
Hmm.
technologies because the same reason when I was at Goldman, I was there when this Goldman put out this research report saying space is going to be this multi-trillion-dollar industry. But yet every single time a company in this kind of sector genre came to our team, we declined every single investment. And I'm like, well, how is it that we're declining every single investment, but at the other end of Goldman says it's going to be this multi-trillion-dollar industry?
Right.
And it's because there's a timing mismatch. You know, most funds, you want to exceed the hurdle rate so you get paid carried interest. And so we're thinking, there's no way we're going to get paid 25% net IRR to get paid carry to go buy a house in the Hamptons. It's better
Uh,
just to keep
so
doing what we've been
meaning the
doing.
time frame was too long. Yes, it's going to
Yeah.
be a multi-trillion dollar industry, but it's going to take 20 plus years to get there.
That the time frame, a little bit more precisely, the time frame to return capital to the shareholders with a return is too
Yeah.
long.
Yeah.
Now, conversely, the ROIC can be tremendous.
Uh-huh.
Um, so we're like, okay,
Return on
there.
invested capital for people who
Yep,
don't know that acronym.
yeah, yeah. So there's a mega trend happening. It's
Hmm.
acyclical. It's recession resistant. Um, there's national security tailwinds, regardless of which political side you're on.
Yeah.
Most Republicans and Democrats can agree that the US and China is like a multi decade national security competition. It's not going away. Um, so, how can you capture this tiger by the tail from a macro standpoint, at the same time, have a capital structure that allows you to attract capital that doesn't take 20 years to return something back to your shareholders or LPs?
Yeah.
So we had this notion originally of a holding company. So we'd have shareholders, we'd raise capital, turn around, use the majority of that capital to buy controlling stakes in aerospace and defense companies,
Uh-huh.
um, and you know aggregate technology and capability, and then grow from there. Over time, what we realized is that we were going to do that, but with a slight modification. Instead of a holding company structure, it would be as an operating company to capture more synergies,
Hmm.
both horizontally within the organization and vertically. So we started Voyager. Um, and we raised a bunch of capital and started buying companies and integrating them together as an operating company. So I say we are a defense and space innovation platform um, that's an acquisitive operating company.
Uh-huh. And when you and I were talking at the ranch, if I remember right, you said that there's like a shorter term part of your business, shorter term focus part of your business, and then there's like longer term play in the business. Am I remembering that right?
Um, I think what you're probably alluding to is some of our business we have is um, is occurring right now as we speak. We have customers, we have products, we have services that we're monetizing on a daily basis.
Uh-huh.
Um, we also have a few longer term growth initiatives that you know as whichever ones of those kind of end up materializing in the years to come will create a lot of value. One of them is we're building the replacement to the International Space Station, which will
Yeah, I
be
remember that.
deorbited in
Yeah.
2030.
Uh-huh.
So the ISS is up in orbit right now, but it's old. It's about
Hmm.
25 years old. So that'll eventually be deorbited. And then one of our longer term projects, which we call Star Lab, is a global joint venture we created, that would be a replacement for the ISS.
Yeah. That is, I mean, this is like dream job for many people, you know. It's like if not an astronaut, like wow, building stuff in space, how cool. Like do you
Yeah.
pinch yourself?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great, it's the reason I like what I do now is it's not just one strategic area.
Uh-huh.
It's capital markets,
Uh-huh.
it's national security,
Uh-huh.
it's just business and operations, and it's also political, and plus it's to your point, technologically it's like some pretty cutting edge technology. So, I live in Colorado, but I'll go to the East Coast. I can easily spend a few days in DC at the Pentagon and other areas, in that area. Then I'll head up to New York City and I'll go meet with, you know, T. Rowe Price.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then you go to a fundraiser for people on the Senate Armed Services Committee, right? So it's a really fun thing because you kind of don't get bored doing one specific thing.
Right. So a lot of the other entrepreneurs that I've had on this podcast have had moments where you weren't sure it was going to work, where, you almost lost the company, where, something failed and you had to make, swap out something. I was talking to someone who basically had to, they had to like rebuild their whole IT infrastructure within a matter of months or the company was going to die. You haven't mentioned any of those moments, but I have to think that there were some bumps along the way. What were some of those for you?
Yeah, I say um, the biggest one, and probably the first one, was when I almost failed out of pilot training. So, if I had failed out, there's no F-15,
None of this happens.
the
Yeah.
different deployments, who knows, maybe I still would end up in finance. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, but I did the T6s, that like propeller plane. I did very
Right.
well. And then I get to the T-38, which is the fighter pilot group, and there's only
Uh-huh.
four of us in there. And it's like another 6 months of training.
Uh-huh.
And you have four check rides. Think of those as like evaluation flights, tests there,
Okay.
and those are
These are
like
like your exams.
those are the exams. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
everything is a test, but these are like the big formal exams.
Uh-huh.
And I failed my first two, and there's only
Oh.
four. And when you fail one, if you fail it, then before you can continue to the next, to moving on, you have to like repeat it and
Uh-huh.
pass and if you fail the repeat, then you can do it a second time, or I guess a third time. And if you fail that, you're out of the program.
Uh-huh.
Conversely, if you fail one and then you repeat it and pass it, and then you get to your second when you fail that, you immediately go. So you only have two extra fails in
Uh-huh.
totality.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I failed my um, first check ride, and then I got to the evaluation, and I failed the second one. I failed that, and then I passed the next one, and then I
Uh-huh.
get to my second check ride, and I failed it, and I got to this was an elimination flight,
Uh-huh.
and I should have failed that flight, um, but they passed me and let me going through, and I was like on watch, right? They're like watching me,
Uh-huh.
um, and the reason they let me pass is also linked to continue moving forward, is also linked to the reason I failed. In this, something that sticks to me in business and when I was at Goldman, attention to detail.
Uh-huh.
So I did not fail any of the actual flights, like the flying, the stick and rudder, like in the air,
Yeah.
right? I actually had the highest score. I'm pretty sure I had the highest score in my class, at least in my last two check rides, um, for flying.
Like
I
your
failed.
actual skills as a
Yeah,
pilot.
the
Okay.
first one I failed because they failed me for my you have to keep track of all of your flight books, your publications, like your checklist manuals and stuff, and
Uh-huh.
you have to update them as new updates come out. You have to like write changes in them. and I forgot to write a change on like page 457. It was 4 letters, FLDR. I didn't write FLDR in the margin, and they failed me.
Wow.
Um, and then when I had to take my retest, I had to do the whole thing again. And then and when you do a flight, you also have to do emergency procedure. But just like you and I talking right here, they have you do a simulated mock emergency procedure that you would just talk through
Uh-huh.
across the desk. And I
Uh-huh.
failed that.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I failed for my publications and for my emergency procedures, both ground based things. Um, and then when I had my elimination flight where I should have failed, it was like the worst flight of my I was like so nervous, and I
Yeah,
flew
I
through the
would think.
bottom of the airspace, and I was above the altitude for the traffic pattern. And the instructor, who was a squadron commander at the time, when we landed, he's like, I think you're actually a really good pilot, like really, really good pilot. Um, but your attention to detail is terrible,
Uh-huh.
like on the non-flying stuff. And
Uh-huh.
he's like, I'm going to pass you, but you can't mess anything else up the rest of flight school. And that, by the way, I had like 4 months left of a 6-month program.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then I had my last two check rides. I got the two highest scores of anybody in the class. Um, Never failed another thing.
Was that like a
And
wake-up call for you? Because obviously this isn't, I can relate to the attention to detail because I could do it when I was, but it wasn't like my first love by any means. But I had to kind of make myself do it. I mean, obviously law school and all that, very detail
mhm.
oriented, but exhausting. Like, so you were capable of doing this clearly. Did you know going into those, like, yeah, I'm not so great at this part, but maybe I'll get through? Or was it like a wake up call?
I definitely did not have enough self recognition to recognize it.
Uh-huh.
It was a wake up call for sure. Um, the way, so the way I would describe it is, and maybe it's a reflection of I've had kind of three different careers, fighter
Yeah.
pilot, private equity, and Voyager. Um, is Like in high school and even at the academy, I was like a 3.0 student. I was like between like a 2.9 and a 3.3. And not because I couldn't get higher grades. Like I absolutely could have gotten higher grades, but I was like, like this is good enough.
Right.
Um, and because there's like three or four other things I want to do at the same exact time. I'm like,
Hmm.
3.2 or whatever is sufficient. And I think I took that approach and then eventually got me so far. And next thing I know, I'm like in this highly competitive fighter pilot school where like everything is graded. And like the only thing that rewarded is like laser focus. Like you have to push everything out and you have to be focused on one thing. And
Hmm.
if you're not, you're just not going to win. And because other
Hmm.
people are, and it's hyper, hyper, hyper competitive. Um, so that was a wake up call for me. And honestly, it was a blessing because it the what I proceeded is I did well, and it taught me that I actually can be laser focused on one thing and direct all my energy into one thing and not feel like I'm missing out or be scattered. Um, and that's why I think I can be very focused, go all in on something, and then once it has to be uncertain and challenging, and then it's like time to go do the next uncertain,
Right.
challenging thing. But I
Or
can
you'll
do it
get
with
bored
focus now.
and you'll lose your focus if you get bored.
Yeah,
Right. It's like, I've done this.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, private equity and Goldman, these are things that I would think attention to detail and just like rigorous hard work would be very important. And obviously you've succeeded at that. You brought this company public. So where else in like were there any moments like that in Voyager where you thought you had a good idea, but it didn't work out that way? Like and how did you keep going if you had something like that?
Well, I mean, we started Voyager about 5 months before the pandemic. Um,
Yeah.
so I remember the world shutting down, the markets like limit down, and I'm thinking, and we're like raising money, we were trying to raise money to like start a business. And I was thinking, man, like this might not have been a great time to start to start a company.
Right, right.
Um, but honestly, we made it through everything. I mean, with Voyager, we never really had anything like that happen because I
Uh-huh.
think the one thing that we're very deliberate on is we always have like 5 paths to glory. It was never like
Mm.
option A or option B. It was like option A through F. And
Uh-huh.
I probably drove my team crazy and still do because like we're doing them all at the same time. And now we might be doing them at different paces,
Uh-huh.
but they're like there was multiple times where we're doing option E and F, at least at a 10 or 20 percentile level, in
Yeah.
the event option A or B doesn't work out. And, you know, it's everyone's own experience. You know, some folks would say go all in on option A, otherwise it's not going to be successful. But what I found, at least for us, is most times option A or B worked out just fine. But there was like one or two times we had to pivot to a different option, more just for M&A or whatever. And it was always nice to have the ability to not have to slow down and start over
Uh-huh.
on something, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, most of the people, and I know this has been true for me, it's like that all in on one thing gets the best results.
Hmm.
I think it's really interesting and kind of unique, your capacity, both of you, to have this broader attention span and keep enough focus on those things to keep them going.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I mean, all in on Voyager,
Yeah.
but all in on Voyager with multiple paths to success, you know? So,
Uh-huh.
um, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I think maybe we left a couple dollars on the table by not, but you know, it's always in retrospect, right? Like you look back and like, oh, like if we had not done those three things and only done this, it would have made more value. But you know, you also, I mean, I don't know what the statistics are, the number of companies that are created that go public for a few $1 billion within less than 6 years through a traditional IPO, not a SPAC, is
Yeah.
probably pretty small. Like we very easily could also have just been a total failed, busted company, you know? So,
Yeah, but you weren't. I mean, that's so have you like what enabled that? Both clearly you made some good business choices, but just like personally, how do you and your co-founder complement each other? Because I don't know if you're familiar with the EOS framework, but there's the idea of like the visionary and the integrator, that there's one person who's like a big picture person and one person who's like way into the details and getting the team to like execute, CEO, COO, that kind of thing. I mean, do you operate that way, or are you both a little of everything?
yeah, I'd say um, we try to not be in the same meeting at the same time.
Uh-huh.
Oftentimes, it's like a divide and conquer. And, you know, there was days where I was agitated about something or disappointed in the result. And um, my co-founder was like, "Hey, you know, tomorrow's another day, right?" And I
Yeah.
provided the same to him at certain times. Um, and then the other thing I would say is I'd say we're complementary because national security and space. I think my co-founder is definitely, you know, focused and visionary on the space side of things. Think of like
Mhm.
exploration, NASA, science, research, things like that. And with my background as a fighter pilot and my network of folks, I'm able to be complementary in the same, call it defense and space sector,
Uh-huh.
but more on the national security side. So Department of Defense and Space Development Agency and all these kinds of groups. So between the two of us, we kind of cover the gamut of call it civil space and national security space and
Uh-huh.
national security.
Uh-huh.
And then we both have experience in how to talk to investors and how to raise money and how does equity value and value creation work, both
Yeah.
qualitative and quantitatively. So it was more of a divide and conquer. There was investors that he knew and formed a relationship, and there was folks that I
Mhm.
knew. So it wasn't like I was the fundraiser and he was not, or vice versa. So
Yeah. So I want you to speculate a little bit. Where you are and you can tell us. I mean, we can look it up, but just roughly speaking, number of employees, revenue, where are you today? And if you think 10 years or even 20 years out, where do you see this thing going?
You know, I think we just acquired a company. We just announced that yesterday, so I'm not sure what our headcount is now. I think it's probably somewhere between 700 and 800 employees or so.
Okay.
Um, and I
Congrats
think,
on the acquisition.
yeah, no, thank you. And when I think through Voyager over the long term, it goes back to what I was saying previously about this mega trend. It's acyclical, it's recession resistant. And when I think about the Cold War, for example, like the 1950s,
Yeah.
it was the Soviet Union and the United States, and there was a multi-decade competition. And it defined a generation, maybe two generations of adults.
Yeah.
And but back then, the difference between today is back then it was government owned, government operated, government used, government funded,
Right.
um, government built and engineered and designed. And then the capital markets were a lot smaller and much less sophisticated. Fast forward to today, there is a new multi-decade competition that will define you and I's generation and the generation of our children, which is between the United States and China.
Hmm.
And hopefully, it never becomes a kinetic conflict, but it is a competition.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and given that, the key difference now, though, is that technology, you see this on the battlefield of Ukraine. Think of like the drone warfare, for example. Technology nowadays is iterating so fast, unlike in the 1950s,
Right.
that you can't have government owned and operated and designed and funded stuff. It won't keep up. So you
Mm,
have a customer, the national security world around the world, national security customers open for business, willing and able to procure products and services from the private sector. Um, and instead of government owned and operated, they're willing to buy stuff from the private sector. And the capital markets, which is much larger and more sophisticated, can now act to basically augment or lever up the governmental money.
mm,
And if if the United States doesn't win this competition and the Western world does not win this competition, it doesn't really matter what the equity returns are in the rest of your portfolio because of life science or biotech or SaaS, because Western value system ceases to exist. Um, so there's a lot of excitement from a capital market standpoint, but it's an interesting excitement because it's like it's a realization that like everyone can be helpful here in this competition, not just you don't just have to wear a uniform, you
uh-huh.
know. So I think long term for Voyager, I think very long term, I don't think in 10 or 20 years, I think of more like an infinite, like a company that can last 100, 150 years kind of a thing. And so I don't have a specific market cap objective, but I just see a continued march towards value creation, because the technologies may ebb and flow, the interest of the customers may ebb and flow, but the macro, it's not going to go away. There's no change in this competition, at least for the next 20, 30, 40 years.
Where does AI play into this?
Yeah, I mean, we actually just bought an AI company in August, down in Southern California, and you know I tell some folks kind of in jest, it's like you're not going to be replaced by AI employees, but you may be replaced by employees who use AI.
Right.
Um, and so I think augmenting uh, the use of AI within an organization, within technology development, um, and treating AI, the key, from an operational standpoint, not like coding and creating the LLM, but how do you actually use it to create
Yeah.
value? I think getting employees past the mental block where the AI is not an intern. If you can figure out how to treat that AI like a colleague,
Uh-huh.
like a peer, and then you have the equivalent of like the unlimited number of peers that you're kind of directing. You have
Right.
all these like kind of wingman essentially that are like at a
Yeah.
peer level.
Yeah. We
Um,
all employ a team of AI agents or whatever you want to call them, right? And it's
yeah,
amazing what capacities that could unlock.
exactly. No, that's kind of how we're thinking about it. And of course, then just within the organization, just trying to you know capture uh, value
Yeah.
using AI for things that are specific to the data that we have within our organization.
You said, I am engaged and I am focused on detail and I am driven as long as I am excited about something. And you're talking about building a company that has 100+ year lifespan. How do you continue to keep yourself engaged in this?
Yeah. Have you heard of the philosopher named James Carse?
Yeah, Infinite Game.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So, he wrote this philosophy, I guess, or book in like the 70s. Simon Sinek recently wrote a book on it,
Right.
but it's funny when we started Voyager, I wrote like a little white paper, and it was just between my co-founder and I. We didn't share it out. No one's ever seen it. And but it was about the difference between a finite versus infinite game within the construct of this company, which by the way didn't have a name at the time. I think we called it like Space Co or something, Voyager.
Yeah.
Um, and the general premise is um, a finite player, like think of like a football game. At the end of the fourth quarter, whoever has more points wins, and the game is
Right.
over, and that's who wins and that's who loses. An infinite player, their objective is just to keep the game going. Okay, well that's great, but now we're going to play the fifth quarter and then the
Right.
sixth quarter and
Right.
forever. And over a series of games, the infinite player always wins the game because they just keep the game going. So, to your point of Infinite Voyager, the reason I said that is because of James Carse.
Yeah.
Um, and so, the way I think about creating value and keeping interested and exciting, national security, patriotism to our country of the United States, that's something to me that I've spent my entire adult life, being interested in.
Yeah.
So, it just happens to manifest itself through Voyager.
Right. Well,
Um,
and the U.S. China thing, it feels like it has apocalyptic significance to you. Like we don't, if this doesn't work out right, our way of life changes significantly.
Yeah, I'd say it has apocalyptic significance to both of us and to
Yeah.
all of
Well,
us.
yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and my father served in the Air Force. My grandfather served in the Korean War. My great grandfather was mustard gassed in World War One. It's kind of a family business.
Uh-huh. Wow.
Um, so you know, patriotism and national service are important to me. So it, it happens to manifest itself through Voyager. So um, I don't. I like that. I don't know what the future of national security, business, defense, technology is because it keeps it interesting, right?
Right.
Which keeps you motivated. Which, in order to win, you have to be motivated.
Right. And you never know what's going to happen, which is kind of the whole point of this podcast, right? How do you continuously react and make those choices when you don't have full information, when you can't have full information?
Yep.
Um, how do you know when to make a call on something?
Yeah. I mean, I what I typically do, very kind of tactical, but um, I try to talk to the relevant stakeholders
Uh-huh.
individually
Uh-huh.
without the other people in the room because sometimes folks will sometimes may not want to say something if other people in the room or they might
Right.
they just might
Right.
not give the unfettered view for reasons I don't might not even be aware of. And so I try to talk to the relevant stakeholders individually, of course, if there's some kind of relevant group as well. Um, and then one thing I've gotten a lot better at over time is if it's an important decision, um, I'll still sleep on it, even if it seems like something is on fire. That's usually not. So I'll usually sleep on it. I have a lot of clarity um, when I have sleep on things and think about it in the morning. Um, and then yeah, then I make a decision, and I am very decisive. This is the decision,
Uh-huh.
uh, and sometimes it's like I heard your input. Your job is to give me information. My job is to make decisions.
Yes.
Um, Now you need to get behind my decision, and we're moving out on this, whatever it is.
Right.
At the same point, I try to always retain flexibility, have an open mind that I could have made the wrong decision or new data can come in and
Right.
change that, which I have done. Um, so I'm not like, you know, stubborn
Yeah.
essentially, but I
Yeah.
also have to be cautious that I don't do it too soon because then you can't lead an organization because now you're rudderless. You're like left and then the next
Right.
day you're right.
You've got to give that decision, and I think there's some art to this. You've got to give that decision enough of a chance and enough, commitment to see
Yep.
if it's going to work out. You just can't be going willy nilly. It's like, oh, we got like, no, this is what we're doing. We're doing it for a while. I need you on board. I mean, I think you've identified all of the key things. One of the things that I've seen founders run into is they're not clear when they're informing versus seeking guidance, and they're kind of in that information gathering mode, and then there's
Mhm.
the decision mode where it's like, this is the choice, this is what we're doing, and we're going to put everything behind that to create this
Yep.
as the best choice. And at the same time, if things change significantly, we will change course.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
and it's important to be, I think, definitive when you make that decision so everyone knows so they can rally behind that. And yeah, and sometimes if I disagree with another executive and I hear them out, and then like they're closer to it than I am,
Hmm.
and even if I think that they're wrong, but they're like adamant and I trust them and they're competent, I'll tell them, I'll say, okay, listen, like, um, I trust you. Um, Not only are we going to go with what you recommend, I am now fully supportive of what you're going to do. So we're not going to go down and then 6 months later and be like, see, I told you so. Like now I'm all in, I'm all bought in myself. So
Right.
I'm willing to be a follower. You have to be a follower sometimes before you can be a leader.
Yeah.
Um, and and then there's no right answer to your point. It's an art. General Patton had the quote, a good decision this week is better than a perfect decision next week. And the difference between this week and next week is cash burn if you're in a
Uh-huh.
startup, right? And
Uh-huh.
sometimes you have to take a risk and you got to move out and you got to figure it out as you go.
Right. Right. Um, and I would imagine you work with a lot of subject matter experts who have way more technical expertise than you do.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, engineers, I have, I don't know, 400 or 500 master's degree of engineering at the company, a couple hundred PhD scientists, um, and they're great. I mean, I listen to them and get their inputs every day, but at the end of the day, my job is to make decisions. And there's things that um, they may not have experience or exposure to, like the concept of equity value and shareholder value, and how do you make
Right.
return on invested capital. And we're not running a nonprofit, right? If you want to work in a nonprofit, go work
Right.
for the government.
Right.
So we're here to make money and to grow shareholder value within meaningful and impactful programs that keeps everyone excited.
Yeah.
Um, so at some point, we have to make a decision, and ultimately, as the president and a board member, I'm responsible for whatever decisions we do. It's not, someone who's an expert on whatever. But of course, we take their feedback very seriously. But we have to run a company.
Yeah. So I want to come back to the idea of an infinite game, because a lot of the watchers of this podcast are going to be founders. Sometimes they get to the point where they're kind of burnt out. They wonder whether they can keep going. They think, they're just kind of working toward a sale, and then they don't know what's next. Like, how would you, if you're not in the aerospace industry, if you're not in a, decades long battle with China and in the middle of that, how would you create your own infinite game no matter what you're doing?
You know, um, there was this story I heard about this janitor. He was cleaning the floors at this company. It was a pharmaceutical company.
Uh-huh.
He'd been working there for many decades, and just a normal janitor. and he was mopping the floors one day, and um, when he was mopping the floors, this kind of wall of executives walked down the hallway where he was mopping the floor, and it was like the CEO and the president and all these investors and all these hot shots. And one of the investors um, said something to him about, like how it said something to him. I think they stopped there and it's like, how is it being a janitor at this company? And like, what do you do? And,
Uh-huh.
oh, 30 years. Wow. Like, man, you must really like what you do. You've been doing this for 30 years. And his response was something. He's like, yeah, but I'm not really a janitor. Like if I didn't clean the floors pristine, if I didn't clean the pristine floors of the clean rooms,
Yeah.
then the medicine might not be pure that
Mm,
we're putting the kids that have cancer that help save lives. So I think any entrepreneur, if they're, you have to run your company for a mission and a purpose. You can't run it to make money. That'll
mhm.
come over the course of time if you run it with a mission and purpose and you just wake up and keep going, i.e., the infinite game.
Yeah.
The goal is to keep the game going. So I think any founder can absolutely create that sense of infinite mission and purpose, regardless of what they're doing. Because anybody can link what they're doing to the grander vision of what they're trying to achieve for society. It
Mhm.
doesn't have to be China and the US. It could be, any different thing. It could be HVAC company. Like without me, I'm, these houses in the winter, people would, there would be no heat and elderly
People
people
would
would
die.
die.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So,
No, that's a great point. And when you talk about mission and purpose and infinite game, I've asked every entrepreneur that I've had on this podcast, do you think the entrepreneurial journey is a spiritual one?
um, so absolutely. Um, and I would say it's a spiritual one because for like me personally, when I think about spiritual, I think of two things. I think of religion spiritual
Uh-huh.
and non-religion spiritual. I'm religious, and so when I think of religion, like in order to believe in these things, you have to have faith. You're like, well, I've never
Mhm.
seen God. How do I know He exists? For
Right, right.
example, so there has to be some semblance of faith, and you just kind of gotta trust that that's what it is. And whether you're wrong or right doesn't really matter. We all end up dead eventually, right? Um,
Yeah, we'll
and
find out or we won't.
yeah.
Right, right.
Um, Conversely, with a company, um, as a founder, it is an open-ended thing you're getting yourself into. It is an unknown outcome. It could fail, it could be successful. Well, how do you define success? Over what period of time? Like, are you going to start this company and are you willing to do it for 35 years when you thought it was going to take five? Or are you going to quit
Uh-huh.
after five and a half?
Yeah,
So I think the fact that it's open-ended also means you have to have faith
yeah,
in what you're doing and the mission and the purpose. Because if you don't have faith and you don't have a mission and a purpose to center that faith around, and it's only about my goal is to start a company and sell it for $1 billion, um, eventually things aren't going to work out and you're going to quit
uh-huh.
um, too early, where maybe they would have worked out. You can sell it for $1 billion, but it might have taken twice as long, or the product might have not
You have to go
been
through
this.
this
It might have
step
been
along
something
the
else
way. Yeah, yeah,
completely.
yeah, 100%. Well, I mean, do you ever look back and I know you didn't necessarily plan any of this, but just based on what you've told me as I look back at your path, it's like everything fit together perfectly. Like you created exactly the experiences that you needed, the interest that you needed. You kind of trusted yourself each step of the way to like, yeah, I think I'll do this thing next, or this thing popped up. I mean, was that conscious, or was it really just about I'm going to trust that I will know the right challenge and that somehow it will all fit together?
Um, it's it's about when I think about, like when I started Voyager. Uh, It's about living a life with no regrets,
Hmm.
um, is a big one for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I have a necklace. The only piece of jewelry I wear besides my wedding ring says "Memento Mori," just remember
Hmm.
death.
Yeah.
And when I was thinking about Voyager, I was doing a lot of visualization at the time, early morning, 4 a.m.,
Yeah. Good time to
and
visualize.
it's dark, and I I would visualize this scenario. It was two scenarios. Scenario one, I was I was always like an old man. I was like 80 years old
Uh-huh.
in a rocking chair. I had my granddaughter on my knee, which I don't have a granddaughter right now. It's just I visualize this,
Yeah.
and my granddaughter came up to me, and I was in this house, and she would come up to me. I'm doing this in my head. I'm visualizing this. She would say, "Grandpa, I was looking on the internet and I read about this company you helped start called Voyager. Tell me about it." And in one scenario, I chuckled and laughed under my breath, like, "Huh, well, that was a terrible idea. Let me tell you about that. Let me tell you about how we failed and did this and lost that." Um, and then as soon as that was over, I did the second visualization, same exact scenario, except she said, "Grandpa, tell me about this company I read about on the internet, Voyager." And I stopped and I smiled and I said, "Well, you know, how we've been able to, you know, everyone can go to school and we have this big house and we have all these opportunities. Well, that success paid for all that. And here's what we did to impact society and humanity. And here's the cool things we did." Like, oh, that's really cool. But in no scenario was there ever a third path where it was like, whether we were successful or failed, I wasn't like, man, I regretted that. That was a
Right.
terrible decision and it ruined, destroyed my life.
Right.
It was like, it was actually, I'm glad that I tried.
Right.
Um,
Will I regret this if I don't try? Is
yeah.
the question.
So
Yeah.
I think people significantly overestimate the risk of starting a company.
Uh-huh.
I think it's more risky to stay at a big company, at a corporation, because your boss might be telling you you're doing a great job and your boss's boss tells you the same thing. But somewhere at the top of the house of the capital structure and the board and the C suite, or even above the C suite, there might be some merger or divestiture or spin out
Yeah.
happening that no one even knows. And you think you're great. And then all of a sudden, you know, go pack your stuff up. Here's your 2 week severance. When you start a company, you know exactly where you're at, you know how much money you got, you know exactly what you have to do to get to where you need to go. Um, and most people that start companies, they have enough of a pedigree that even if the company doesn't work out, they can always go back and get a job, right?
Right.
So, what I think people actually misconstrue, they think, oh, if we fail, I'm going to be homeless living under the Brooklyn Bridge. That's the furthest from the truth. You can get a job. I think most people that have a background of success where they've won at something and then won at another thing, it's like they've been in the zone for 4 decades, nothing but net. They are scared to go out publicly, be on LinkedIn, do podcasts, do speeches, get the t-shirt, build a website, hire people, and then publicly, utterly, a giant disaster, fail
Right.
publicly. Most people don't want to fail publicly because it'll be publicly embarrassing and shame them, and it ruins this pristine shell of a reputation they've built. So I think the sooner people can get over the possibility of failing publicly and the public shame that would come with that, and realize, well, most of those people don't care. Your true family and friends will be with your side anyways. Then I think you would have a whole host of entrepreneurs, because that's what they're scared of. They're scared of failing when they've done nothing but succeed. It doesn't
That's
really
a
matter.
yeah, that's a really yeah, you have to kind of reframe what failure means. It's just information, right? It's
Failure
just
is living a
data.
life of regret when you're 80 years old.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I love that. And then when you tie that back into like purpose and infinite game kind of stuff, you have to be willing to like publicly declare that.
Mhm.
And the idea that you might lose if you do that. But man, that's where all the good stuff is.
Yeah. And,
Yeah,
if you
I love
lose,
that.
all the people that were kind of your pretend friends because they thought you were going to be super successful or have a bunch of money then
Yeah.
become the peanut gallery. Those
Yeah.
people don't care, and odds are those people are also working for the man at some big corporation. The
Right.
people that actually your real family, your real friends, even if you fail, they're gonna be like, "Hey, man, at least you threw your hat in the ring, right?
Yeah. Good
How
for
can I
you
help
for
you get
going
back on
for
your
it.
feet?" You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, that's a perfect place to end this conversation, Matt. Thank you so much. Is if people want to keep track of Voyager Technologies or keep track of what you're up to, what's the best way for them to do that?
Voyager, we're on all the social media stuff. Check out our website. You can see what we're up to. Um, defense, national security, rockets, missiles, space stations. So yeah.
Yeah. What about you? If people want to hear more about you or from you, how do they do that?
Um, I'm they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I keep a pretty low public profile though, so
Yeah, I can imagine. All right. Well, thank you, Matt. Great conversation. Any parting words of wisdom for our audience?
no, I mean, besides what I wrapped up with at the end is the sooner you can get over the risk of embarrassment of publicly failing if you do fail,
Yeah,
then that'll give you the confidence to live a life without regret.
I think that's a great place to leave this conversation. Thanks, Matt. Take care.
Cheers. Bye.
All right. Thank you for joining us on the Pick Now podcast. We'll see you next time.